Hey, want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about. Like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised. My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today, I'm discussing the case of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. On December 28, 1956, on the south side of Chicago, 12-year-old Patricia Grimes and her 15-year-old sister Barbara left their home to go to the Brighton Theater to watch Elvis Presley's movie Love Me Tender for the 11th time. Several witnesses, including some of their classmates, saw them at the theater before they seemingly vanished. Despite the Grimes sisters being the subjects of one of the largest, most expensive, and most labor-intensive manhunts in Cook County history, and even with a personal plea from Elvis Presley himself, they were never seen alive again. This is the case of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. In 1956, Barbara Jean and Patricia Kathleen Grimes, described by their mother as being as good as gold, lived in a modest home located at 3634 Damon Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. They lived there with their mother Loretta, their 17-year-old sister Teresa, and their two brothers, 14-year-old Joseph and 11-year-old James. They did have an older sister, Shirley, who was married and lived with her husband. They also had another older sister, Leona, who tragically passed away in 1954 at 26 years old. Their parents, Loretta and Joseph, got divorced in 1951. And Loretta worked extremely hard to provide for her family. She worked 2 jobs, one as a dining room matron at Bridewell Prison, and the second for a pharmaceutical manufacturing firm. Barbara was 15 in 1956, was a sophomore at Thomas Kelly Prep High School, and worked part-time in a furniture store. She was a quiet and reserved girl with an interest in art, who would most often let her sister Patricia take the lead in most situations. Patricia was 12 years old in 1956 and attended St. Maurice's Catholic School. She was physically larger than her big sister and was also known for having a big personality. She was extremely outgoing. Of course, around this time, there was a rather new but very popular musical artist dominating the airwaves named Elvis Presley, and both girls were huge Elvis fans. A classmate of Patricia's said that she told her that she once skipped school to go to Memphis to visit Graceland, but her mom Loretta maintained that this never happened. Either way, they were huge Elvis fans, and in November 1956, his debut film, Love Me Tender, hit theaters. This is really in the height of what is now called Elvis Mania. He was all over TV, and his first single, Heartbreak Hotel, hit #1 on the Billboard singles chart. So, of course, Barbara and Patricia had to see his first movie. And they did, 10 times. But as superfans, they weren't just going to stop at 10. On Friday, December 28, 1956, they went to see it again. The Brighton Theater was about 1.5 miles from their home, and it's believed but not entirely confirmed that they took the bus there around 7:30 p.m. They had $2.50 for tickets, concessions, and bus fare. They were seen at the theater by their classmate Dorothy Weinert, who was there with her sister. They actually sat right behind the Grimes sisters. Now, Brighton Theater was showing a double feature of the film, and Dorothy and her sister left during intermission, but they saw the Grimes sisters getting back in line for concessions, which led Dorothy to believe that they'd stayed for the double feature. And this is confirmed by another teenager named Roger Menard. He says he was also sitting behind the Grimes sisters during both screenings, and left at the same time as they did. The sisters were expected home at about 11:45 p.m., and at midnight their mom sent 2 of the Grimes siblings to wait for them at the bus stop. But when multiple buses came and went and there was still no sighting of them, the siblings went back home. Loretta began to call friends of the sisters and ask if they'd seen them, but no one had. For obvious reasons, Loretta was immediately concerned and contacted police at 2:15 a.m. That same day, a large-scale city search began, one of the largest in Cook County history. Barbara had last been seen wearing black ballerina shoes, a gray tweed skirt, a yellow blouse, a gray coat, white bobby socks, and a gray headscarf. Patricia was last seen wearing black shoes, a yellow sweater, a black jacket with a white stripe on the sleeves, blue jeans, and a white headscarf. An official task force of hundreds of officers was formed, along with hundreds of local volunteers. They went door to door, canvassing the area, questioning locals, and dredging rivers and canals in search of the sisters. Their case was almost immediately front-page news, and it really can't be overstated how much the community rallied together. See, the community had just suffered a horrific blow about 15 months prior, and what would turn out to be an eerily similar case, in October of 1955, 3 boys, 13-year-old John Schuessler, 11-year-old Anton Schuessler Jr., and 14-year-old Robert Peterson went missing after going to see a movie at the Loop Theater. This was less than 10 miles away from Brighton Theater, and they were unfortunately found 2 days later brutally murdered in a ditch in Robinson Woods Forest. Their murderer, Kenneth Hansen, would not be convicted until 1995. So when the public gets wind of the Grimes sisters case, it naturally caused panic in many Chicago residents. Despite the large-scale efforts to find the Grimes sisters, they were not found. However, a large number of sightings would be reported to the police, and several anonymous hoax callers got involved with the case as well. On January 1st, 1957, an anonymous caller told the police that Patricia's body could be found in an alley behind the Brighton Theater. Police searched the area but found nothing, and assumed that this was a prank. On January 14, 1957, an anonymous caller phoned the house of a classmate of Patricia Grimes, Sandra Tolston, twice. The first call was silent. The second, which came 15 minutes later, was a seemingly frightened young girl asking, quote, "Is that you, Sandra? Is Sandra there?" End quote. Then they hung up. Sandra's mother was sure that this was Patricia, but that's never been confirmed. The week after the sisters went missing, another classmate of Patricia's also received an anonymous call. Catherine picked up the phone, and it was a man who said, quote, "We rented a cottage, and Patricia took her clothes off, but her sister wouldn't. What are you going to do about it? Call the police?" End quote. And when Catherine said yes, the man hung up. Catherine told her mom, who then called the police, who believed this call to be a hoax. But sightings of the sisters were coming in droves as well. On December 29, 1956, a classmate of Patricia named Catherine Borak said she saw Patricia walk by with 2 other girls while she was eating at a restaurant on South Archer Avenue. Roger Menard, the boy who claimed he sat behind the sisters at Brighton Theater, said he exited the theater at the same time as the sisters, and he saw a late-model green Buick pull up to them, and they kept walking. He says he also saw a black Mercury with 2 boys in it pull up to the girls, but once again, they kept walking. 2 teenage boys claim that they saw the girls walking 2 blocks from their home around 11:30 p.m. on December 28th. A security guard named Jack Franklin claimed that he'd given the sisters directions on the morning of December 29th, and he remembered them because they were rude to him. A friend of the girls, Judy Burrow, claims to have seen them later in the day walking along Archer Avenue. And a train conductor claims to have seen them that same day as well. He says that they were on his train near the Great Lakes Training Center looking for 2 sailors named Larry and Terry. There were a ton of sightings in this case, but most of them contradicted each other. The media attention in this case was definitely a double-edged sword. It was front-page news, and everyone claimed to have seen them, from trains to local record stores and hotels, getting in cars with young men who resembled Elvis, and even as far as Tennessee, the home of Elvis. And it didn't take long before their mother received the first of 9 ransom notes for the girls. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
On January 7, 1957, Loretta received the first of 9 ransom notes. These letters were postmarked from Chicago, and they said that the girls would be released when the ransom was paid. First, they wanted $1,000, and then they kept upping the amounts until $5,000. And each letter told Loretta to make the payment in different locations in Milwaukee. FBI agents actually attended all of these meetings, but then the letters were tied to a patient who was writing the ransom notes for fun from a Veterans Administration hospital in Downey, Illinois. On January 15, 1957, yet another anonymous caller phoned police and told them that Patricia and Barbara's bodies could be found in Santa Fe Park. They were able to trace this call to 6108 Halstead Street. This led them to a bar, where it was discovered that a man named William Krantz and another man had used the phone booth at the same time the call was placed to police. William Krantz was arrested and taken into custody for this. Krantz was a 53-year-old steam fitter, a veteran, and was divorced with 3 kids. After his arrest, Krantz was given 2 lie detector tests. The technician administering the test said Krantz, quote, gave unsatisfactory answers to many questions, end quote. During the first test, Krantz said that he didn't make the phone call, but in the second test, he admitted he did, and said that his reasoning was that he had a dream revealing the location of the girls' bodies to him, and that he was a psychic. He denied killing the girls in both tests, and denied any involvement at all, and really, without evidence to prove otherwise, he was released. The man who was with him at the time of the phone call was 38-year-old Stanley Serwicks. He was also arrested and given a lie detector test. The test showed that he had no knowledge of the crime, so he was also released. At this point, law enforcement has a ton of leads that don't really seem to go anywhere, but they do have a theory that really is a tale as old as time in true crime. They thought the girls ran away willingly. So while their disappearance did garner significant media attention and allegedly 300,000 people were questioned, it was still being treated internally as some girls who ran off with their boyfriends willingly. And like with any investigation in the public eye, police received an overwhelming amount of people claiming they'd seen the girls. But instead of being skeptical, Or considering the fact that they were alone in all of these sightings, to them, this confirmed what they thought they already knew, that the girls chose to be missing. But their mom, Loretta, was adamant that they would have never run away. She pointed out that Patricia had her 13th birthday planned the day after they disappeared, and that the girls had Christmas gifts that they were excited about, portable radios to be exact, which I imagine enabled them to have even more time to listen to Elvis. Loretta pleaded for their return, asking for anyone who may be holding them against their will to release them, stating that she would, quote, forgive them from the bottom of her heart, end quote. And though she did not believe they'd run away, she asked that if they had, they come home. And she wasn't the only one to make a public plea. This case was so huge that Elvis's estate commented on the case. In a televised statement, they said, quote, if you are good Elvis Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries, end quote. It feels like this would be the breaking point in this case. To have the estate of arguably the largest pop star in the US, if not the world, shedding light on the case and asking the girls to come home is insane. But the girls did not return home. On January 19, 1957, after the Elvis plea, an anonymous letter was sent to the Chicago Sun-Times advice columnist Ann Landers. While this letter was never proven to be anything more than a hoax, I think its contents are pretty interesting nonetheless. The letter, allegedly written by a girl who had seen the Grimes sisters at the Brighton Theater the night of December 28th, said, quote, a man about 22 or 25 pushed Barbara in the back seat of the car and Pat in the front seat. We got part of the license plate number as the car drove by us. The first four numbers were 2184, end quote. Unfortunately, investigation into this letter didn't provide any new leads. But then the girls were found, and to the surprise of no one in their family, they hadn't run away. On Tuesday, January 22nd, 1957, nearly a month after they'd gone missing, a construction worker named Leonard Prescott was traveling east along German Church Road in Willow Springs near the county line. This is about 17 miles from the girls' home and the theater. He was on his way to get groceries when he saw what he thought were mannequins on the side of the road just before the culvert leading to Devil's Creek. He didn't get out of his car, but instead he drove home and told his wife Marie what he'd seen. And something just didn't sit right with either of them. Marie specifically insisted that they go back and take another look just in case. And when they did, they realized what Leonard had believed to be mannequins were the nude bodies of two young girls. They didn't know it yet, but it was Barbara and Patricia Grimes. From here, Marie and Leonard told the Willow Springs Police Department what they saw. While police did immediately go out to the scene, it took a few hours for them to secure it. Several people walked through the area, potentially destroying evidence, and this was highly criticized later. But this is what they found. Patricia and Barbara were nude, and their remains were frozen. Barbara was lying on her left side with her knees slightly bent, and Patricia was lying face up across her at a perpendicular angle, creating a T. Their father was given the task of identifying their bodies, after which he broke down and cried, quote, I tried to tell police my daughters didn't run away, but they wouldn't listen to me, end quote. He was so distraught that another relative had to make the formal identification of the girls. Their autopsies were conducted the following day by 3 pathologists, Dr. Jerry Kearns, Dr. Edwin Hirsch, and Dr. A.C. Webb. Following a 5-hour-long autopsy on each girl, the pathologist came to the conclusion that the girls had been murdered, but they did disagree on the method. One of the doctors told the Courier that the deaths were brutal homicides, and, quote, those girls could not have died naturally, end quote. Dr. Jerry Kearns told the Chicago Tribune, quote, this is one of the roughest cases I've ever seen in my years with the coroner's office. The murderer in this case was diabolically clever. He used a method which we are unable to detect. Perhaps he is a person trained in chemistry, and with a knowledge of unusual poisons, end quote. Barbara had a bruised face, and Patricia had 3 small wounds the size of pinpricks in her breast. Their bodies were otherwise free of obvious wounds, and both sisters had unremarkable toxicology reports. It was noted that Barbara had likely engaged in sexual intercourse shortly before her death, though it's unclear if it was consensual. By eliminating other options, all the experts agreed that their cause of death was secondary shock/exposure to cold. Though they couldn't agree on a date of death, several factors, including analyzing their stomach contents, led them to believe that Barbara and Patricia had died the same night they went missing, within 5 hours of their last confirmed sighting. Now, these findings were pretty controversial, even within law enforcement. Harry Gloss, the chief investigator for the Cook County Coroner's Office, disagreed. Instead, he believed that the girls had been subjected to violence, and even that they were held captive and sexually assaulted. He thought the investigators were withholding this information to protect the reputation of the girls. He also believed that the ice on their bodies meant that they'd been alive until at least January 7th. He thought that was the first day their body heat would react to the snow to create ice. Now, Gloss was actually fired because he wouldn't let up on these claims. Officials did maintain their position that there was no corruption here. But I do think it's worth noting that the sheriff agreed with Gloss's conclusions, and even deputized him so he could keep working on the case, though without pay. The area where the girls' bodies were found was thoroughly searched by law enforcement, including by a task force of 200 people. But none of the girls' clothing or personal effects were ever found. This and an overall lack of physical evidence has fueled controversy over whether the girls were murdered where they were found or murdered somewhere else and then dumped at that final location. But despite these differences in opinion, it wouldn't take long for investigators to make an arrest in the case. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together, and Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing, especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the keys. And it leads on who they might have been running for.
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
News that the girls' remains had been found spread quickly, and the day after their autopsies, January 24th, 1957, the owner of D&L Restaurant, which was located about 5 miles from the Brighton Theater, John Duros, called police and informed them that around 5:40 a.m. on December 30th, he'd seen the Grimes sisters looking sick or intoxicated, walking with a dishwasher that had been employed in his restaurant, Edward Benny Bedwell. This claim was backed up by his wife, Minnie, and a patron of the restaurant named Renee Eccles. And Bedwell was subsequently arrested. When he was arrested, 21-year-old Bedwell was taken to the warden's office. There he was questioned by the sheriff, undersheriff, and a police captain without his attorney present for nearly 3 days. His attorney, David Bradshaw, was furious and told the Chicago Tribune, quote, "It is apparent to me after talking with Bedwell that the law enforcement agencies of Cook County have in their possession a young man who is wholly illiterate. He cannot read or write except his own name, and that only recently. They have a purported confession. In reading over newspaper accounts of this purported confession, it is apparent to me that there are many discrepancies of major proportions." End quote. Bedwell also allegedly told Bradshaw that he'd had little to no sleep for 5 days prior to the confession. And in order for him to sign the confession, police had offered him, quote, "the opportunity to ride in a Cadillac automobile for the first time in his life, and to spend a night in a motel with 2 television sets." End quote. Bedwell initially claimed that Duros was mistaken, that the girls he was with were not the Grimes sisters, but after 3 days of interrogation, he changed his story. Despite his lawyer claiming that he was illiterate, Bedwell apparently claimed in his 14-page written confession that he and an accomplice named Frank met the girls at Harold's Club on West Madison Street, and that they hung out with the girls in bars and hotels for 6 days prior to their murder. He claimed that on January 7th, he and Frank gave the girls hot dogs before the girls rejected their sexual advances. So he and Frank beat them to death and threw their bodies in a ditch where they were later found. While the police were ready to throw Bedwell behind bars after this confession, the problem was that none of this information matched the evidence or the autopsies. The Grimes sisters had not been beaten to death, nor did they have hot dogs in their stomachs. Bedwell was also able to prove that he was at work during the times that the girls were thought to have been abducted and killed. It was also proven that he was working on the day he claims he murdered the girls. So he had solid alibis for the day that the girls were killed as well as the day that he said that he killed them. As far as Frank, his alleged accomplice, well, he was a real man named William C. Willingham. Police found him in Bridewell Prison, where he was serving a 30-day sentence for disorderly conduct. He said that he knew Bedwell and had hung out with him in the past, but he wasn't with Bedwell on the night of the girls' murder, and he was never with the sisters. He said that he was at work on the day Bedwell claimed he and Frank had met the girls at Harold's Club on West Madison, and he did offer to take a polygraph test. In addition to that, 2 teenage girls, Irene Dean and Carol King, would also come forward to tell investigators that they were the girls Duros had seen with Bedwell on the morning of December 30th. Despite all the evidence that this was a false confession, law enforcement took Bedwell on this macabre reenactment tour of the alleged crimes. Thousands of Chicago residents came out of their homes to leer at the spectacle, and the Chicago Tribune described it as, quote, "a tragic circus parade at high speed," end quote. In the end, Loretta Grimes never believed Bedwell's confession, stating, quote, "My girls came from a good home. They were raised in religious surroundings, and they looked like children. How could they be taken for adults by saloon keepers? And with the police assigned to West Madison Street 24 hours a day, why didn't some policemen see them?" End quote. Loretta was also seen hugging Bedwell's mom and telling her that she did not believe her son was guilty. And Bedwell was freed on a $20,000 bond in early February 1957. After that, all charges were dropped against him the following month, though he was immediately rearrested and extradited to Florida, where he was facing charges of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl. So while most people do believe that his confession was false, some people still wonder if it could have been him. But while law enforcement was focused on Bedwell, the Grimes family buried Barbara and Patricia. Their wake began on January 25, 1957 at St. Maurice's Church and lasted for several days. Hundreds of people attended and paid their respects. When Loretta approached their coffins, she fell to her knees and cried, quote, my girls, at last I'm with my girls," end quote. On January 28th, the girls were buried, with their classmates serving as pallbearers. Now, of course, this stopped everything in the Grimes family's lives. And since Loretta was unable to work, the community banded together and raised money for the family, which was really uncommon at the time. Almost $10,000 was raised. This money was used to repair their home and pay off their mortgage.
Stitch Fix. Stop shopping. Get styled.
Not today, sweatpants. Somebody's wearing jeans that fit. Wow!
No photos, please. I'm just a regular dad who happens to have a stylist.
I really look my best when someone else makes the decisions.
Hey, we can all see you two-way mirrors.
Just share your size, style, and budget, and your stylist sends personalized looks right to your door. Stitch Fix. Get started today at StitchFix.com.
I want to hug you. I'm going to hug you. I'm coming in for a hug.
Despite the overwhelming number of people questioned and tips received, law enforcement found themselves at dead end after dead end. In May of 1957, Loretta received an anonymous phone call from someone claiming to be the murderer of her daughters. The thing that set this call apart from the other hoax calls was that the caller ended the call by saying, quote, "I know something about your little girl that no one else knows, not even the police. The smallest girl's toes were crossed at their feet." End quote. Loretta was convinced that this man could have killed her daughters, but he was never identified. In June 1957, Loretta received another anonymous call at her house. This time, the caller was a young girl and said, quote, "This is Petey, this is Petey," end quote. And then they hung up. Petey was Patricia's nickname. And after this, Loretta said that she cried for an hour. There were so many incidents like this that it's honestly just heartbreaking. But fast forward to 1962, we get another confession. A 34-year-old man named Alfred Smith Lawless, who was coming up on being released from a California prison where he was serving 60 days for a drunkenness charge, confessed to killing the Grimes sisters. He said he picked up the girls at the Brighton Theater before sexually assaulting them, beating and strangling them, binding them, and throwing their bodies from a car. But this confession, much like Bedwell's, was not consistent with the physical evidence or the autopsies, and was not given any merit. Unfortunately, both Joseph and Loretta passed away in 1965 and 1989, respectively, without seeing the murder of their daughters solved. So what happened to Patricia and Barbara Grimes? Well, as you might expect, there are a lot of theories and loose ends. While William Krantz, the man claiming to be a psychic who said that the girls could be found in Santa Fe Park, was dismissed, many point to the fact that the girls were found about a mile from where he claimed they would be. After Kenneth Hansen was convicted for killing Robert Peterson and John and Anton Schuessler, many believed and still believe that he was likely responsible for killing the Grimes sisters. But Hansen maintained his innocence up until his death, and no official link between the cases has ever been made. Tips to police continued to pour in steadily over the years, with 1976 being the first year no tips came in at all. And throughout the last almost 70 years, several theories have developed and been investigated, but two seem to prevail. 17-year-old Robert Max Fleeg was initially considered a suspect in the Grimes sisters' murder. But according to Illinois law, because he was underage, he didn't have to take a polygraph test. But he did take an unofficial test at the suggestion of the Chicago police captain. And he allegedly, during this test, confessed to the murders of Barbara and Patricia. But he was released after there was no physical evidence linking him to the case. However, interestingly enough, in 1958, Fleeg was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to the murder of 14-year-old Mary Wagner. Mary had resisted his sexual advances, so Fleeg beat her to death and then threw her body in a pond. The next prevailing theory includes 23-year-old Charles Leroy Melquist. He was convicted of the 1958 murder of 15-year-old Bonnie Lee Scott. Investigators basically noticed that there were similarities between her murder and the Grimes sisters' murders. Bonnie was missing for 2 months before her nude, decapitated body was found less than 10 miles from where the Grimes sisters' bodies had been found. She had unfortunately been dumped in a similar fashion, just a few feet from the road. And the day after Bonnie's remains were found, Loretta got a call from her alleged murderer, stating, quote, "I've committed another perfect crime. This is another one those cops won't solve," end quote. Loretta maintained that this was the same person who called her in May of 1957. She said that she would never forget his voice. But Charles Melquist was never questioned about the Grimes sisters. He served 11 years of his 99-year sentence, and then went on to live a relatively normal life before dying in 2010. Now, there was a resurgence of interest in this case in 2013, when a retired police officer, Ray Johnson, was doing research for his book, Chicago Haunt Detective. He interviewed a lot of people, including the girl's brother James, who was 11 when they went missing, and 68 at the time of the interview in 2013. James said, quote, "It bothers me, especially around Christmas time and the holidays. I always wonder if they were alive today, how many nieces and nephews would I have?" End quote. But despite Johnson's best efforts, the case seems to have reached a plateau. The next possible steps might be exhumation to get any DNA evidence possible. But as far as we know, that hasn't happened. And that's pretty much where the case is today. Which brings me right to our call to action. Please keep sharing this case. While I know it's been nearly 70 years since Patricia and Barbara were murdered, the case is still open, and they have family waiting for answers. So please share. As a reminder, on December 28, 1956, 12-year-old Patricia Grimes and her 15-year-old sister Barbara Grimes left their home in Chicago to go to the Brighton Theater. Their bodies were later found on January 22, 1957, about 17 miles from the theater and their home. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Cook County Sheriff's Cold Case Unit at 708-865-4549. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. This episode contains writing and research assistance by Rebecca. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open and our emotional support puppies, Heber and Popcorn, are in the room. I do want to remind you, if you want to get even more content about Heber and Popcorn, you can find that over on our Discord. I did start a little Discord server for the podcast. I am not good at Discord. I am trying. But it's just like an open line of communication there. And while I can't promise to be able to respond to every message and be there 24/7. I do enjoy interacting with you guys over there. So if you want to connect with other listeners, if you want to look at our pets feed where we post a lot of pictures of our pets, including Popcorn and Heber, definitely go check it out. I also wanted to let you guys know that on Monday, check your media pressure feed because there is a bonus episode, really an update episode about what's been happening about Maura Murray's case that is going to drop. And you guys, if you have followed the Maura Murray case, if you followed Julie's journey, I think you're going to want to listen. But let's move on to the case. I feel like the older cases are kind of hard. I feel like when so much time has been separated, it's a little bit hard for people who are listening to like connect with these victims, which I think is kind of like the secret sauce of my show, is I just try to make you guys care about these people. I guess it's not really a secret. I just want you to care. And I feel like when culture and society and so much, when 70 years is removed, or there's 70 years between that, it's a little bit harder to connect, which is why I was trying to really transport you into that time without being like over explanatory, if you will. I try to draw the line between really getting you into that mindset and keeping the facts relevant. So I wanted to talk a lot about Elvis. That seemed really relevant in this case, and I think most people can make that connection of like, oh my gosh, yeah, Elvis just came to the scene. It's his first movie. I think most of us are familiar with that pop culture era, if you will, before the Beatles, before the Rolling Stones, before all that insanity, there was Elvis. So I hope that I was able to convey that. I hope I was able to do that. As far as media discrepancies go, for this one, it was really about like trying to track all these theories, trying to track all the ransom notes, all the calls. I can, in a sense, imagine I have dealt with something similar in Alyssa's case, but I don't know how to describe to you the torture that is getting random correspondence from people saying they have information, but not really giving it. It's that taunting of it. I have information. They won't give you more. They call and they hang up. They write a letter, kind of stringing you along, asking you to write back. It is torture. Because I think, and I can't speak for Loretta. I can't even speak from like a mom's point of view. But I can tell you that, for me, there's this like battle in your mind when it happens. Like somebody just wrote a comment on my TikTok saying, your sister's alive. They were like spamming it. And part of me wants to say, yes, oh my gosh, jump all in. Let's go find her. There's still that in the back of my head where I wish she was. I hope she is. And there's another part of you that just kind of deeply knows that it's just cruelty, that this person on the other end of the phone, the other end of the screen, the letter, whatever it might be, likely doesn't have this information. And that's where the guilt comes in. You feel guilt for not having that hope. And then it's like, do I tell the police? Do I tell them to tell the police? Where does this go from here? Like, it's a horrific experience. And to see Loretta and her whole family have to deal with that so many times. I mean, it's enough to break someone. And as far as I know, Loretta never broke. Which kind of brings me right to the hero of this episode. I have two heroes. One is Loretta for keeping the case active, inspiring detectives with her words to keep going. I mean, gosh, decades and decades later. Just shout out to Loretta for being on top of it, for constantly being in the media and doing everything she could to bring her daughters home. Again, unimaginable. My next hero of the episode is Elvis's estate. I love it. I love when people use their massive platforms for good. And I think a part of making sure that continues to happen. I mean, of course, Elvis's estate might be a big reach at this time. But I think encouraging people with massive platforms to use it for good will hopefully just encourage them to keep doing it. I think with great power or influence, a number of followers, people who listen to your podcast, people who read your newsletter, your Substack, whatever it is, I don't care. With that influence, with that massive following comes a great responsibility. And I just love to see it. Shout out to Elvis's estate. Shout out to everyone who has a huge platform that uses it to spread awareness for causes. But let's go on to our segment of hope. This week, I am reading from ComoNews.com. This was written by Como News staff. Unfortunately, nobody by name is accredited, but the title reads, DNA Tech Leads to Arrest in Decades-Old Cold Case Murder of Washington Woman. Marianne Daniels was 33 when she was found murdered in her home in February 1989. And this one's pretty straightforward. Somebody took another look at the case, they decided to rerun the DNA, and they found a match. The article reads, quote, detectives said that Joseph Andrew Jacquez, a former resident of Everett, was identified through forensic genetic genealogy from biological material left on Daniel's body, end quote. They were also able to link DNA from the murder weapon to this man. He was apprehended and is obviously facing charges now. Marianne's sister did give a statement. Sandy Daniels London said, quote, she faced unfortunate circumstances while living in a transitional rental house, which her social worker placed her in. She should have protected her from this happening, but instead put her in danger. And in the end, Marianne lost her life. She had a hard life, and is now at peace. Thanks to all that made this happen." End quote. Marianne's brother, Terry Lee Celine, said, quote, "Marianne was trusting, carefree, and always believed the good in people. She has never been forgotten by her family." End quote. I really like this for our segment of hope this week because that is the hope in the Grimes sisters' case. At least according to this last investigator. He wants to get their bodies exhumed, get some DNA, and see what they can do with it. And honestly, as long as her family's on board, I really hope that that happens. But, as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.